All right, should we go to the segment where we did a segment, but then by the time we did the segment needed to be updated, so now we're going to update the segment. Should we go to that segment?
Yeah, this has become a semi-regular feature here on the show, the updated segment that was originally recorded for the drive-thru.
Well, if people would just speak more clearly, if we could love me more dearly, speak more fucking clearly every day. So the news came out several days ago. I will say, news came out several days ago that Mike Rotunda, who was obviously, legend from the 80s and Hall of Famer and his family tree and et cetera, that Mike Rotunda was in hospice care, was what the word was at the time. And we Brian, you and I had not heard anything about any serious health problem that would cause something like that. We were shocked, and we talked about hearing that and about Mike Rotunda in general. And the way that it had come out was that Barry Windham, who obviously is Mike's best friend and brother-in-law, but also he's the Windham and Rotunda and Wyatt families. We talk about the various branches of that, but are all connected. So when Barry said whatever he said, which I really haven't heard the original interview, but people either interpreted it as Mike being in hospice when he was truthfully in the hospital, or potentially someone said that Barry was speaking about some of Bray Wyatt's health issues. Maybe people got the comments transposed. I don't know. But people got the impression he was in hospice. He is not in hospice and hadn't been in hospice. He has, however, been seriously ill in the hospital. And so it's not like, never mind. I mean, he still has had a serious health issue. It's just not what we reported. So we took the segment out of, because by the time that we were finished recording the program that it was going to air in, the news came out that it wasn't true. So we took it out of that program. But now that we have brought the topic up, Mike Rotunda still deserves being discussed and talked about, which we did at length. So we want to play our thoughts and comments, but we want to try to update people on what the newest information is, which was that he had apparently a serious heart attack back in the middle or end of September, and has been in the hospital and then recovering from that. And, so I think you even have a statement from the family to clarify everything.
I have a statement that was issued by Mika Rotunda. I assume that's his daughter. Public statement on behalf of the Rotunda family. Our family would like to take a moment to clarify some information currently circulating online regarding my father, Mike Rotunda. Yes, my Uncle Barry did make a comment mentioning that my father is in hospice care while answering a question about my late brother, Windham, whom we lost 2 years ago. My father is not in hospice, but rather in a rehabilitation center. He suffered a massive heart attack on September 20th, was in a coma for a week, and spent over a month hospitalized. By the grace of God, he has now transitioned to a rehabilitation center, where our family remains present, hopeful, and focused on his recovery. It has already been a long road, and we know there is still a long road ahead, but our faith in God remains strong. Anyone who knows my dad knows that it's his strength, work ethic, and athleticism that have carried him throughout not just this, but every challenge life has thrown his way. If there's one person I have faith in, it's Captain Mike. We are deeply grateful for the outpouring of love, prayers, and support from the wrestling world and our local communities. At this time, we kindly ask for privacy as we continue walking this journey together, but we warmly welcome continued prayers, good energy, and healing thoughts for his recovery. Signed with love and gratitude.
So that clears that up. And I assume and hopefully that means that Mike is out of any kind of woods, but he probably still has, work to do in front of him to get back in, in the place he needs to be. But having said that, Brian, did you want to at this time go to the nice things that we said about him when we didn't know what was wrong with him?
Let's go to this right now. This was originally recorded for Drive-Thru 416. Here it is now, Jim Cornette's talk about Mike Rotunda. One more topic before we get to whatever you watched on wrestling this past week. As we are recording today, news broke this morning, and I wanted to give you a chance to say a little something about it, that Mike Rotunda is in hospice care, and this is sudden news to us. We had not heard that this was happening, but what are your thoughts on what's going on?
Well, and I, like you heard this morning also on the internet, and like you, I didn't know that he'd been ill. I mean, I hadn't seen anything reported, and I'm sorry, if this has been going on for some time that I had missed it, but just a really nice guy. And except for that one job guy that they replay the clip on Twitter over and over that he had to kind of take down, goozle, stretch, and pin on that one WCW match back in the late 80s. Nobody that I've ever known had any problem with Mike Rotunda. A really great amateur wrestler, hotshot amateur in school, and then used a lot of that in some of his gimmicks. I don't know where Captain Mike Rotunda came from that time with him and Norman and whatever. I'd never known him to be a ship captain. But the varsity club thing, that's why they put that together. Him and Rick Steiner, they were both hotshot amateurs, in their school days. So anyway, I worked with him in Crockett, and he had already been pretty much a star in Florida at that point in time. And I think had already had maybe his first run with Barry Windham as the U.S. Express in 85, right?
That is correct. Yeah. He stayed there.
And then,
well, I mean, it's a weird thing. Him and Barry Windham get the mega push managed by Lou Albano as a babyface with Born in the USA as their theme song until they replace it with Real American, which was going to be theirs. And they win the belts, they lose the belts, they win them back. The fans are super into them. Wyndham leaves. And I think it goes that like Mike Rotunda left with him and then quickly returned, but Wyndham didn't. And that's when they started teaming him up with Dan Spivey as the second version of the U.S. Express up until the very beginning of 87. And then he went back to Florida, which at that time was about to be absorbed by Crockett.
Yes, and Barry was bouncing back and forth regularly at that point in time. But that's the thing. I think he was the kind of guy that they were always trying to give him a gimmick because he had personality, but it was more reserved. and he was a good worker and a good talent, but they were always trying in those days to give him a gimmick or personality of some kind. And then Vince came up with the idea of, a tax agent is not supposed to they're supposed to be like the stern-faced, look over the glasses type of personality. So that I think worked. But anyway, I sure hate to hear that. And send the bet to the whole family, because I guess most people know that Barry and Mike were brothers-in-law because Barry's father, Blackjack, and had another daughter that Mike married, and the Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas, and I can't do the whole family tree off the top of my head, but they're all related is what I'm trying to say. And So they've obviously had a lot to deal with.
I know you couldn't keep a gimmick forever of being like an angry college athlete, but Varsity Club Mike Rotunda is one of like my favorite things. And for all the doom and gloom about 1988 NWA, when I think about it, I think about the things I really loved. The stuff you were doing with the Fantastics, and then I can't even really say the Horseman stuff because that really wasn't even on cable. It was only on the worldwide stuff, which eventually I had to get. But there was good stuff happening too. And I think throughout 88, the Varsity Club with Kevin, Mike Rotunda, and Rick Steiner. I mean, that's what got Rick Steiner over as a star, was that run. And it wasn't just by being himself. It was the interaction with him and Mike Rotunda. When they finally turned him, that was the match at Starrcade. It was Rick Steiner versus Mike Rotunda, and the place went fucking crazy for Rick Steiner.
Well, that's it. Rotunda was perfect as the no, I don't want to say prissy heel, but the stick up his ass heel that was even more straight laced because he was the varsity type athlete. And there's Rick Steiner as the dog faced gremlin, and he just nutty as a fucking fruitcake. And then there's Sullivan, who's crazy in a completely different way, trying to keep them both, together and corralled. And that's the differences is what made the angle.
And then, it got weird because after Rick Steiner left, the thing continued. But like Dan Spivey, I think, joined again, and Dr. Death was a part of it. And that was my first exposure to Mike Rotunda, was the feud with Dr. Death in 1989.
Yeah, that was, again, they were playing off the fact that they both had the amateur backgrounds and everything, but it wasn't the best use of either guy at that point in time. And, that was the thing also was remember when he was coming out to the entrance music was when he was Captain Mike Rotunda, when they switched him babyface, and then he was trying to smile and be a babyface. And, I think he spent some time didn't he do school teaching after he got out of the ring or something? He just wasn't like a Tommy Rich wildfire fucking babyface, but the entrance music was, "That's what I like about you.
Oh
you really the Romantics, my old friends from Michigan, right? Yeah. They were big fans of ours, but I don't know what that had to do, that song had to do with Mike Rotunda or what he was the captain of, unless they'd give him a girl named Tennille."
See, within 6 months, he went from still being the angry jock, doing stuff with Kevin Sullivan, to he was a babyface, and then all of a sudden his hair started growing, and then all of a sudden he's wearing a windbreaker. And then all of a sudden he was wearing a captain's hat. He went from being the wrestling team captain, somehow that transitioned to being a yacht captain. And who's on his yacht? We talked about this the other day. Abdullah the Butcher and babyface Norman the Lunatic.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just such a weird, what is going on here? What is happening here?
And then many people don't know this, but then later on, he had Michael McDonald on his yacht, and they invented yacht rock. So,
well, I don't know about that, but obviously Mike Rotunda's in everyone's wishes, and everyone's thinking of the family right now. Well, there it is, Jim, the conversation we had about the career of Mike Rotunda. We're happy to hear that he's in a rehabilitation center, and as his daughter asked for, we're certainly sending positive vibes. I brought up the Varsity Club, and I hate to obsess over the Varsity Club, but they were so cool. It's a case where you have two guys perfectly cast. It made Rick Steiner, and there's no one else who could have done that. But Mike Rotunda was so perfect in that gimmick, so believable. It was like another person from the curly-haired babyface of a year and a half earlier.
The straight man.
There was no one who could have done that better. I'm convinced that Rick Steiner and him were like the perfect two guys for that. And it worked perfectly.
Yeah, because Mike was legitimate and fit the Varsity Club thing and was like the school jock and the, superior type of, guy with a stick up his ass and everything. And here's this crazy fucking gremlin partner. If they'd have both been wacky, or even if Mike had been a regular wrestler, it wouldn't have worked. It had to be the contrast. And it was Abbott and Costello, but in the ring without trying to be funny, and Steiner was. And Rotunda's reactions made him funnier.
And it was a little less than a year earlier, he was in a feud with like Ed the Bull Gantner in Florida.
Yeah.
And that was right after he had been, again, a curly-haired, smiling babyface. So just the recreation of him in a gimmick that worked perfectly, it's kind of amazing because he had been another guy completely, yet it worked. But big fan of Captain Mike Rotunda in the Varsity Club. And, I don't know if I've told you this, but the Wyndham thing, the idea that he said hospice or Barry Wyndham, I should specify with the family, that he said hospice when it was actually not that. Did I ever tell you about when I was involved with managing a rapper?
No.
With Gene Simmons, with the black Gene Simmons?
No, wait, there's a black Gene Simmons, and you co-managed a rapper with a guy named...
Briefly.
Help me understand. Yeah. How did you did you lose a bet?
Well, no, I didn't lose a bet, but I'll explain how this all ties to the Barry Wyndham thing, which made me think of it. So when I was working at Sony Music early on in my career, I had become friends with various people in the industry. And I had met a guy who said he was managing a rapper, and his name was Gene Simmons. It was a famous name in music, but this was not the guy from Kiss. It was a black guy from, I believe, northern New Jersey at that time. Really good guy. We became really good friends.
So the Jersey branch of the Simmons family.
And again, we became really good friends. He would come out and hang out with us on the beach. Like, we had some really fun times. And he was later in the movie American Gangsta, if you ever see that, when they walk into the room where they're preparing the drugs, all the topless women. He's the bodyguard by the door, which caused me to pop in the movie theater when I saw that. But he comes in, we're talking about this rapper he's managing named Shade. At the same time that was Slim Shady, but that's a whole nother issue. But this guy Shade had a lot of talent, a lot of skills, had a really good producer he was working with that I was doing some stuff with. And there was one song that was intriguing at that time. It was called the HIV song. And it was him rapping from the point of view of being the virus. It was a socially conscious rap song from an artist who didn't have a lot of like socially conscious material typically.
From a virus's point of view.
Well, the story was, and I actually thought this was a heck of a little hook, the story that Gene Simmons told me was that Shade's mother had AIDS. And it was his, reaction to this tragic news at that time. He wrote this rap. And it was a interesting song, and it was actually a well-done production. So I said, let's see what we could do, if there's anything to be done. And at that time, I had it brought to an A&R guy at Sony named Keith Naftali, who, if you're from the Bay Area, he's kind of, I guess, a legend for dance music and hip-hop on the radio. He was doing A&R there at the time. And he didn't see it, and it ended up not working out. But the day it went to him, I'm on the phone with Gene Simmons in my office at Sony, 32nd floor. And I tell him, yeah, I'll let you know how it goes, but, we're going to play him the song, talk to him about it, see what he says. And I said, I just think, hopefully they understand, too, there's a great story to be told about this guy reacting to his mom's illness and writing this rap. There's something there.
That's what people, if anything happened, is what they would be hanging their hat on.
So then Gene says to me, yeah, I forgot, I meant to tell you about that. It's not his mom, it's his aunt. And I said, oh, all right, that's not the biggest deal. And then he says, it's not AIDS, it's lupus. I said, what the fuck? I mean, the whole pitch is it's the HIV song. His mom has AIDS. Not his mom has lupus. How did he write the song if his mom has lupus? Yeah, what?
And now, on American Top 40, he wrote this song because his aunt has lupus.
Yeah. I mean, it's so fucking funny because how the hell does this happen? Why was I told the exact opposite? But that's my story about briefly co-managing a rapper with the HIV song.
At least you didn't get either lupus or HIV from this experience.
It's not HIV. It's not AIDS. It's lupus. I was like, what? Like, that's not even close. It's not even close as diseases go. What the fuck?
It's way off on the disease meter.
It's on the other side of the scale.
And then there's lycanthropy in the middle. See? And you never know what'll happen. Folks, here's something that I've said many times. If you have to lay in a hospital bed for an extended period of time in traction, immobile, hooked up to machines, being monitored by electronic devices, what's going to make you happy? The right pair of earbuds. Haven't I said that 100 times, Brian?
Oh, I don't know. At least 90.
Every time I hear about somebody that's laid up in some kind of body cast, that's hanging from a system of wires and pulleys from the ceiling. Wow, you're like a wind chime in the hospital room. When they open the window, bells go off on your ass. You need the right kind of earbuds to put yourself in the right frame of mind in a situation like that. If you're in that particular situation, what I'm saying is morale could be low. I think you'll agree with that, don't you, Brian? That if for some reason or another you were poured into a cement overcoat to where you couldn't even scratch your own balls or asshole, and then you were strapped to a goddamn plank while being plugged into a wall, and you got to stay there for 6, 8, 10 months while they're rebuilding the iron lung to get it ready for you. You need earbuds or you're going to get in a grumpy mood, right?
Again, maybe not the best example, but earbuds are good for everybody. I would say that. And of course, I love a certain pair of earbuds that we're going to talk about right now. I know.
Well, those Raycon Everyday Earbuds Classic is what you're talking about.
Bingo.
No reason to be bashful.
I love my Raycon. I think the listeners who have gotten their Raycons love their Raycons. And of course, you don't need to be in an iron lung. And no one is currently, as we record right now. You don't need to be like that to enjoy good sounds.
I don't want to go on with you like that. What I want to talk about is the wonderful Everyday Earbuds Classic that are loaded with the upgrades like the active noise cancellation, the multi-point connectivity, that pairing of two devices at the same time. It's kismet, it's magic. And an ergonomic fit that stays put inside your ear canal no matter what you're doing. Whether you could be physically assaulted on the street, you could have a safe fall on your head. When they remove the stain that used to be your cranium, those earbuds will be right in the middle of it.
You can walk to work. You can go.
You can walk to work. That's right. You can. You'll be doing cartwheels on the way to work if you're listening to the right kind of music. I'm walking on sunshine. See, they wonder, why is he skipping down a sidewalk? He just skipping down he must be the happiest son of a bitch in the world. He's skipping down a sidewalk. Shit. He ran the red light and that rainbow bread truck just ran him over.
Again,
but folks,
again, not the best example. And walking on sunshine,
they've got an awareness mode. They've got an awareness mode. See, that's up to that guy that just got smeared by that bread truck, because the Raycons have an awareness mode that if he'd had the sense to act, a sense that God gave a goose, as Mama Cornette would say, to have activated that awareness mode, or when he's walking the dog or running errands, then he would know what's going on around him without missing the beat, instead of, boom, getting your meat beat by a truck.
Again, that's not what that means. But ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about here, you hear what that means? That means it's time for the truth. We're talking about a great earbud.
Well, boy, howdy, I'll tell you what, it is true. It's true every step of the way, because they are now Raycon. You know what and they got the 30-day happiness guarantee. We've talked about that many times. You got to be happy for 30 days or they'll come and tickle you until you start laughing.
No, they will make sure you're happy with your Raycon earbuds, and who wouldn't be? We are. I know Stacy Cornette is a major fan, and of course, we have a great deal for the listeners here.
She got the cool mint color. You got the blush violet, I believe. There's all kinds of vibrant colors that they come in. But did you hear the big news now? You may want to get some more of these things while you got the opportunity, because Black Friday's coming up, Cyber Monday's coming up, all of those different type of days are coming up. Well, we got days for you right now where everything at Raycon, Raycon, by Raycon.com is 30% off. If you use the code JCE, by Raycon.com/JCE, 30% off everything on the site. So to hell with your Black Fridays and your Cyber Mondays and your Titty Tuesdays and your Thirsty Thursdays and your shitty Saturdays.
What about
it don't matter what day of the week it is. Just go to Buy Raycon. What about
Wednesday?
Well, Wednesday occasionally is okay because you're halfway in between shit and more shit. BuyRaycon.com/JCE. 30% off everything that you would ever want. So whether you're laying there, whether you're propped up on the porch, whether rigor mortis has set in and they can't bend your legs and the coffin was too short, so they've just propped you up on the porch. Neighborhood kids come over and throw black walnuts at you all the time.
Again, details that are not needed, but ladies and gentlemen, if you're propped up on the porch and you want to hear some good sounds, we recommend Raycon.
Sounds of any kind. People talking. Could be people talking.
Oh, Inoki just died again. Fuck.
Oh, see there, folks, you can get the news that Inoki just died again. Oh, now he's...
Oh,
you hear his last gasp for breath.
All right, well, we have to end this. Jim, one more time.
Yes.
That wonderful promo code.
BuyRaycon.com/JCE, 30% off. Listen to all of the earbuds.